Coast to coast, this is the issue, of course, of Judge Kavanaugh, but certainly within the beltway of Washington, there is no other topic. There are voices for the Senate. There are voices, well, in opposition, and there are voices for the president. Here is Ms. Conway.
The White House is not getting involved in the FBI investigation in that way. The president very much respects the independence of the FBI and feels, as he said last night, that they should be looking at anything that they think is credible within this limited scope.
A well-chosen moment, because on this early Monday morning, there's no other topic, Leslie Vinjamuri, than the idea of FBI independence here. From where you sit within your analysis, is the FBI doing an independent investigation?
Well, I mean, this is the question for everybody, and I think the real concern here is why is it there, what limits are being drawn and who's drawing them. And, people are very concerned about the restrictions that seem to be placed on the investigation, especially with respect to who they are able to talk to. And it's not clear. We don't know for sure where those limitations seem to be coming from, but there do seem to be very clear lines being drawn, and this is why we're getting so much pushback from a number of people, as you've mentioned.
Leslie, what is remarkable, in one of my books of the summer, folks, with Garrett Graff's wonderful The Threat Matrix, which is basically a history of the FBI and how they do business, both good and bad. But boy, Leslie, they have a certain process, don't they? And part of the issue here is, will they be able to do standard FBI process?
Yeah, of course. It's good. I mean, this is an incredibly complicated investigation to be undertaken. Remember, we've got a very artificial time limit placed on this, which is the 1 week that Jeff Flake asked for on the back of Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota, a very impassioned speech where she said time and time again, give us 1 week. Why 1 week, right? Why is it necessary to close this down after 1 week? Only because of the pushback, right, from the Republican members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. But it is a very artificial deadline, unclear whether the FBI can do the work that it needs to do within that week. But, the thing I'm interested to see, Tom, and I think so many people, will be not only what comes out of the investigation, the formal investigation in the course of this week, but what happens in the broader public, what other information comes out, what the level of political mobilization is. You can imagine we get to the end of this week, even if there isn't concrete evidence to steer things in a different direction, I think it becomes politically very difficult to close this down in 6 or 7 days.
Leslie, does this impact the midterm election? Or are we, do we believe the polls? Does it mobilize the women vote? Are we overestimating the fact that it could mobilize the women vote?
Well, I think it has implications on both sides of the aisle, right? The Republican conservative, the most conservative part of the Republican Party, and frankly, the entire party, care tremendously about the composition of this court. So if there's a failure to get Kavanaugh onto that court, I think that it becomes even more important to Republicans to turn out and vote because the court could potentially still be up for grabs, this particular seat. So, yes, will it mobilize the women voters? Even for the women voters, especially in the Democratic Party, have been more mobilized. They will become more mobilized as a result of this particular hearing and investigation and this candidate, the controversy surrounding Kavanaugh.
What about the women voters in the Republican Party? And again, do we think that the president cooled off his candidate a touch because he's afraid of being hurt in the midterms?
Oh, I do think that, Trump's statement was remarkable in its level of restraint, undoubtedly because he can see how controversial this is. Now, the thing to note about the Republican votes is that the number of registered Republicans has actually come down, and some of that has to do with, women peeling off from the Republican Party. But our is one of the lines of divide, not only Republican, Democrat, but gender. I think the data that we've seen so far absolutely suggests that this is the case. A plurality of women are concerned about this particular confirmation.
Leslie, it's just an opinion, but you're such a good student of this and maybe advantaged by the distance you are. And that is the idea from 1972 where a Democratic woman on Manhattan said, I don't understand, all my friends voted for McGovern. Is it possible the Democrats are setting themselves up for a shock loss here because the Republicans get so fired up?
It's undoubtedly the case that what happens in these next 4, 5, 6 days is going to affect how intensely people feel about the midterm elections and turning out. And could there be a backlash against the Democrats if Kavanaugh's confirmation is pulled? Sure, it could. It will mobilize the Republican base. It's going to have an effect. It's, as you said, this is the most significant fact of American politics right now, and frankly, the rest of the world, unusually, is really watching this. So there will be an effect, and we can't predict what it is right now because we have to see how this plays out.